Okay, we're going to make some negative and positive layouts using our scans. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Photoshop and I'm going to retrieve one of my scans. I'm going to go to the File menu and I'm going to Open. And we may need to go over to the Darkroom Scans folder, but if you've made copies in your own folder, you might find that you've already saved them. So I know my work is in my Darkroom Scans folder, and I'm going to grab one to start with. So I'm opening up my Scans folder. Now, if you have two files that are attached like this, you're going to make a selection to copy just one of them at a time. So I'm going to copy my top image here. First, I need to select it with the rectangular marquee tool. And then I can go to Edit, Copy, or Control C. And now, before I paste it in anywhere, I'm going to make a brand new document. So I'm going to go to the File menu and create a brand new document. I like these to be 8.5 by 11 because they'll fit our smaller prints pretty well. And I'm going to type in that this is my own negative positive file. So I just abbreviate with neg positive. And everything else I'm going to leave the same, like my resolution, and I'm going to leave it in full RGB color mode. We can change the backgrounds, but that's something that we can actually do with some of the other Photoshop tools going forward. So I'm just going to leave it as white, but I do have the option to change it here if I want to. It's pretty limited, but it'll be more options for your background if you do it once the file is created. So as I hit create, I'm going to get my empty document, and I already know that I copied my selection here. I chose my photogram to start with, and I'm going to paste it in with Edit Paste or Control V. Now, if I look at my layers palette over here, what I've noticed is I've got a background layer, and then my photogram is right on top. So my Move tool is going to let me position this. And I'm going to leave room for my second print underneath because I'm going to make a copy of this so that copy can be the positive. If I need to do any editing to layer one, then I'm going to go to the image and adjustments. And these first 4 adjustments will give you the ability to play with your brightness and contrast, and then some more sophisticated values with changing your curves or exposure. But at a minimum, you probably just might need brightness and contrast only. So if I want to make my image a little bit brighter, I could, or if I needed to make it darker, I could, or if I needed to add a little bit more contrast, going for a more black and white and less gray, then I would bump my contrast up. So it depends on what you want to have as your final result. So I'm going to say, okay, I kind of like my contrast, and I do have some grays here, and click OK. If you want to change the size of this, in my case, I might want to make it a little bit bigger. I can go to the Edit menu, and I get something called Free Transform, or I can use the key command Control T. It's going to put a bounding box around my photogram, and then I can make it a little bit bigger, and I just have to remember to press the Enter button to make that bounding box disappear when I'm done. The simple key command to copy your layer is Control J. When I hit Control J and I look at my layers palette, I now have my copy, but it does put it in the same place. So if you're not where your Move tool is, you can grab your Move tool again and then position this. Now, if you want to go for perfect symmetry, you can start playing around with this, and you can go to the Edit menu and go to Transform, where you have some commands at the very bottom of the screen, like you can rotate this 180, you can flip it horizontal or vertical, and make any kind of symmetry or asymmetrical design that you want. So in this case, I'm going to flip mine vertical, and then it gives me that sort of perfect symmetry, and then I can reposition things. Okay. So now I have to just do the last step, which is to hit Control I. That means we're inverting. You could also get this under the layer menu. Oh, my mistake, actually. Image menu, adjustments, and then you'll see invert. The key command is Control I, so you can just hit Control I depending on what layer you want to invert. Last step would be to maybe add a gradient to your background. So I'm jumping down to my background layer here. My gradient tool is right here. The gradient will fill the background layer, and you can click on the options for the gradient. If you go to basics, you can open up all the basic colors, or if you want some very specific colors like oranges, greens, etc. I'm just going to go with, I think there were some grays in here that I liked for this, so I'm just going to go with a standard gray. And then as long as I'm in my background layer, as I click and drag across, it will fill my background layer. Now you have a lot of gradient shapes here, so you can play around with a radial gradient. And if you don't like the way the gradient is working, you can just click and drag across until you find a combination that you like. If you wanted your background to be solid, you could right click on your gradient tool and find your paint bucket. And your paint bucket is going to drop whatever your foreground color is set at. So I click on my foreground color box in the toolbar to get the color picker. And if I wanted it to be like a purplish color, then as long as I'm in my background layer and I have my paint bucket, I can just drop in. I have to kind of fill that gradient with the paint bucket again, and it'll do a nice solid color. So your choice on whether you want to fill with your paint bucket or your gradient tool. Just make sure that you're going to the File menu and you're saving as. Remember, you want to save on your computer, not to the Creative Cloud. And then I'm navigating to the desktop where I can find the photography shortcut folder, go into my own class folder, and I've already labeled this ahead of time, calling it negative positive or neg pos, so I remember what this assignment is. Save, and you can always say OK to maximize